Avoidant behavior can be very confusing and hard to understand. When you've gone through a relationship with an avoidant, especially a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant that leans heavily dismissive, you are likely in a state of confusion trying to wrap your head around what just happened. Your partner seemed all into you. They seemed fully in love with you. And suddenly they're cold, they're shut down, they're withdrawing, and can abruptly end a wonderful relationship. And it just doesn't make sense. How can they go from being so loving to so cold? Well, the answer is shame. Shame is the driving emotion behind dismissive avoidant attachment. And the same thing applies to fearful avoidants that lean heavily dismissive. Shame is the wound. The entire attachment style, all their behaviors are oriented around avoiding that shame, avoiding confronting it within themselves, and avoiding having their inner shame exposed to their partner. Shame is a toxic emotion. People often confuse shame with guilt. When someone says, "You should feel ashamed of yourself," what they really mean is, you should feel guilty for whatever it is that you did. But guilt is actually a healthy emotion. If you feel guilt, that's your brain's way of saying, I did something wrong. That means you have a conscience. That's a good thing. And guilt has potential resolutions. If you feel guilty, you could make amends if you hurt somebody, or you could stop repeating the behavior that you feel guilty about. But whereas guilt is, I did something wrong, shame is, I am something wrong. My existence is wrong. I am defective. I'm not lovable. I'm worthless. I'm not enough. Those are shame-based thoughts. And shame is a toxic emotion that has no resolution. And shame, with a dismissive avoidant, it stems from that consistent childhood emotional neglect that they experienced. They grew up in households where their emotional needs weren't met. They weren't given that love and affection, and they weren't able to express their own emotions. Their feelings were shot down. The message was sent loud and clear. Your emotions aren't welcome here. They personalize that neglect, growing up to feel defective and unlovable, like there's something wrong with them. That's the wound of shame. And that shame is why they behave the way they do. It's why they have walls up around their heart, because their subconscious fear is, if I lower my walls and I let my partner in, my partner will figure me out, and they'll figure out that I'm defective, and they'll reject me, and they will abandon me. Shame is also why they avoid self-reflection, because self-reflection requires being willing to take accountability, saying, hey, I did this wrong, this is how I can do better. But in the mind of the avoidant, it's, I did this wrong because I'm defective, because I'm worthless. Essentially, self-reflection and acknowledging any kind of mistakes would be admitting their own shame and defectiveness. It's too painful. So to shield themselves from that shame, they project the responsibility of their behaviors and fears onto other people and other things. So if it becomes somebody else's fault, they don't have to self-reflect. They get to avoid it. And they get to avoid dealing with emotions because dealing with emotions equates to vulnerability, and emotions are shameful. They were taught that as a child, so they're avoiding the shame in that aspect too. It's also why they don't handle criticism well, because when they're being criticized, they take it as confirmation of their own shame. You may be giving them kind, constructive criticism, but in their mind, what they hear is, see, you're defective, you're defective, you're defective. They learn to rely heavily on surface level external validation to confirm that they have worth. They need that attention and validation from others, because what that does is it soothes the wound of shame. And many of their avoiding behaviors that they can do, like being a workaholic, a hobbyaholic, or an alcoholic, or really traveling all the time, or just constantly staying busy, or getting into various different addictions, helps them distract themselves from those emotions and that inner shame. So the entire attachment style really is shame-based, and it is shame-driven. Can they heal that wound? Can they actually learn to become emotionally available? They can, but they have to want it. They'd have to go against a lifetime of programming. The human mind learns in repetition. The more you repeat anything, the more automatic it becomes. So they spent an entire lifetime avoiding that shame. It becomes instinctive. So they'd have to be willing to go against their entire lifetime of programming, self-reflect, and really face that wound and be willing to do things differently and do it in repetition. That's how they can reprogram the emotional mind. But they have to want it. Loving them harder doesn't soothe that wound of shame. Trying to get them to self-reflect won't make them do it. They have to want it. You can't fix them. They have to be willing to look within and heal themselves, because you can't do it for them no matter how much you love this person.